I oversee a team of expert witnesses and we prepare reports for the court.
How would you get them to overcome that fear and take on the challenge of being a carer?
So we prepare reports to look at how that person's life has changed, either post-catastrophic injury event or post-clinical negligence.
So I'm sitting here with Norma Findlay from Scotland. I'm delighted you travelled over this morning, Norma, isn't that right? Over to Seating Matters?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, quick flight over, thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's an honour. This is at least your second visit to Seating Matters because you came over very kindly and contributed to the book, yes. The Power of OT. And you have a lovely chapter in there, which we want to talk about later. So is this your second visit to Seating Matters?
It is, yes. It was July. I came across last in July and straight off the plane. We had a nice chat on the way here and then sat down and
did the interview for the book?
Yes, and then have been delighted to be able to share your book with so many people who have benefited. The other chapters are amazing. So thank you.
Well, so your chapter is called Compassion, Dignity, what's the other?
And kindness. Yes.
So each chapter was named really according to, when I read the chapter back, I pulled out what I thought really emphasised the chapter. So yours did that compassion, the kindness and the empathy. And there's some lovely parts. So tell us a little bit at what you're currently doing as an OT.
So as an occupational therapist, my official title, I guess, is clinical director. So I oversee a team of expert witnesses and we prepare reports for the court in both personal injury and clinical negligence cases, mostly OTs, but I also have physiotherapists, nurses, and we prepare reports to look at how that person's life has changed, either post-catastrophic injury event or post-clinical negligence. And the team are also have some case management roles as well. So that's primarily what I spend my time doing. I prepare reports for the court, so I get to go out and assess the needs of people, either children, young people and adults who may have had spinal injury, brain injury, and we'll look at a really full assessment. So it's a very in-depth assessment and we'll prepare reports. But I also have a team of manual handling trainers. So I've had that team for many years now and we deliver training for paid carers, so agency carers on safe moving and assisting. And I guess that's where the term of dignity, kindness and compassion comes in, which I will often refer to when we're training, that's delivered in such a way.
So that's a separate business from the medico-legal business. So that's two.
Yeah.
So when I interviewed you the last time and when I read your chapter again, you very much come under that umbrella of, a portfolio career. Somebody mentioned that, that as an occupational therapist, you can have a number of different things going on at the same time. So you have your medico-legal practice, then you have your moving and handling where you do the training.
Yes.
That is like a charity, isn't it?
So I am the course director for training for care. So we have various different training courses, epilepsy, infection control, and I have the umbrella and the group for safe moving and handling. But I've also expanded that now to include 24-hour postural care and training for care in our organisation, who have been in existence for 40 years now. They specialise in vocational training, SVQs, things like this to support either young people leaving school to train them up in SVQs to SVQ level, but also the short courses that we would describe are what my team would deliver. So I tend to oversee that now, but I like to keep my hand in and make sure that I can have some impact still to those carers that are delivering the care to the people that we would assess.
So going back to the medico-legal, I used to do a bit of that as well in the past. And just for those listening or for OTs who might think about dipping their toes into it, tell us about how important the role of the OT is in that particular field.
Yeah, I would agree.
And why they're suited so much to that role.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you are right. They are suited to it. And I think over the years I've become more appreciative of the skills as an occupational therapist now. Without a doubt, physiotherapists are essential within the reports of preparing physiotherapy reports, as are nursing. But when it comes to preparing what we would classify as care needs, so that's looking at every part of that person's life from the moment they get up in the morning, during the night as well, so 24 hours. That is considering their position, their moving and assisting needs, their feeding needs, all their care needs, their equipment needs, their home adaptations needs. So I have yet to find another truly holistic profession whereby we have the insight. And obviously you're talking about very experienced therapists preparing reports, so you must have a certain amount of experience within these different areas to be able to indeed prepare reports. So it's the holistic nature. And interestingly, what we tend to find is that if you're commenting on the level of care that a person needs, if you're, say, looking at how long that task might take in hospitals, say in a hospital setting, you say, well, getting dressed, let's just say it takes 30 minutes. But actually, at home, where you're looking at how you can conserve your energy to then participate in activities later on in the day, what gives you fulfillment in life. So how can we assist you to complete that task without using too much of your energy, so that then you have energy left for the most quality, the important things in life. That I truly feel occupational therapists understand. So rather than just looking at purely task-based activities, they understand the holistic nature and the impact that if you use all your energy on certain tasks, then you're not able to fully participate in life. And really that has been my experience. So I was preparing reports for many years, but also working as an occupational therapist within the community. And then when I took on the role of supervising and reviewing others' reports, that's when I really did truly appreciate the skills of occupational therapists.
And for OTs who might be interested in getting into this, is there training available for them?
Well, that's a really good question, a very good question, because I guess the answer is yes. Yes, it is, because I've had the pleasure of being part of that development of that training. We've yet to make it, I guess you wouldn't call it mandatory, but from the court's perspective, there's no legislation that states that certain training must take place. There are other courses which have taken place which allow OTs or expert witnesses to receive an understanding on the court process, etc. But actually purely for care experts, there haven't been. So I have had the great pleasure of working with a company called Inspire Medilaw. And so we delivered the very first course to train any either nursing staff or OTs on becoming a care expert, but it sits within the training of others who are medical experts, so GPs, consultants, anaesthetists, etc., because the court process is the same. So you would go through things like letter of instruction, understanding the court process, how to respond to consultation or potentially cross-examination, etc. So it leads you through the whole process. And that has just been, so the first course was delivered, I delivered that course in September of last year, so it's very new, but we do anticipate that in future, as the area expands and we see more and more instructions coming through, that if people are new to becoming care experts, then there will be an increase in need for that training.
Yeah. A lot of people have a fear of that part of occupational therapy. There's a great fear of, going to court or having to, how would you get them to overcome that fear and take on the challenge of being a care?
I recognise that, and certainly a lot of the people I brought into my team initially, and they will still see, even if they're very experienced, they will say, I don't think it's anyone's preference to attend court. It's unfamiliar for most of us. But I guess if you think about it, a hospital setting or a clinical setting would be very unfamiliar to many lawyers, King's Counsel, etc. So we're familiar with our environments and they're familiar with theirs. So it's about trying to demystify that process. Now, what I tend to do is, if, for example, we have a consultation which is legal counsel questioning you on your report, so asking you to justify, so that this is, if you're instructed by the pursuer's side, for example, or defence, it would be their legal team asking you specific questions about your report. So what I tend to do is I will meet with the care expert beforehand and I put their hat on, and I will tend to ask the kind of questions that I would anticipate that they would. So, and sometimes that's putting them under pressure, and they'll think, and I'll stop and I'll say, would you rather these questions come from me or to come from the judge?
Yeah.
Because, this is kind of, yeah, definitely. Now, bearing in mind that 99% of cases, certainly in Scotland, are going to settle. They're not going to go to court. And there's a number of reasons for that. Certainly the whole process of claims is very stressful, and we recognise that. We recognise that when we meet someone to assess that, especially if it's a child and the parents, and they've got a lot to cope with. So it's not the preferred, and also it's costly. It's extremely costly to the legal system to go through courts. So we always say to people, be prepared that it may well go to court. I suppose the other thing to remember, I would always point out as well, is that as an OT, you may not choose to become an expert witness. You may not choose to prepare reports for the court. But in any event, as a professional, we can be called to submit our notes for consideration in court cases. And certainly we have been involved in cases where we're being asked to pass comment on another therapist's competency. Yeah.
So writing your reports in your day-to-day work
Absolutely.
Is also very important, and
Absolutely.
should take maybe
That's
even
right.
a wee bit of extra
That's
training
right.
for that as well.
That's right. And actually I have most of my care experts are both care experts and occupational therapists within the community. And what they have said is that they find that their assessment skills within the community have greatly improved, because they're always, when you're scrutinising someone else's assessment, you then become much more mindful of documentation of your own assessments and records.
So most of the OTs that would be working as medical legal consultants would also, a lot of them would also work in the local authority or in social care or
Absolutely,
whatever. So
yes.
it's not at all or
In
nothing.
fact, the opposite. It could be, the court could question whether you're a credible witness, if you need to stay relevant. So most of us have a way. So my way to achieving that clinical input is through training for care, because it means that I'll be called into, whether it's schools or different areas of complex needs within an organisation called Capability Scotland. So they would call me in, and that's my input to be able to stay relevant, because you cannot be a full-time expert unless you understand
the needs
and the changing landscape as well, because obviously care changes, the delivery of care changes too.
I love one of your quote in the book. I actually highlighted it in the book because I think it's so important, and because it's something that we overlook or that we take for granted. And I highlighted this in the book, and it said, we need to challenge the assumption that secondary complications and destructive postures are an inevitable consequence for people with complex disabilities. I know I'm moving away from the medical legal work at the minute, but just because you were saying there that you still have your hand in the moving and handling, the 24-hour posture, but a lot of time people presume if someone has a complex need, inevitably they're going to get a contracture, they're going to get a pressure injury. And I just think that there, can you maybe want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd love to, absolutely. And I suppose over the years, as well as moving and assisting, so I see every part, although they may seem separate, it's all a jigsaw. So everything is around complex care and meeting those needs. So if you have someone with who needs assistance to be moved and handled, then they will have needs in postural care.
Yeah.
And certainly, although I found that within my reports, I would always make recommendations where there was need for 24-hour postural care. And actually what grew from there was a need to educate lawyers and the court, indeed, that what happens. And so a case like someone who has a spinal injury, that's not a progressive condition. A spinal injury, when the injury takes place, that's the injury is complete. Mm-hmm. However, what we see in secondary complications can actually be a direct result of failure to protect that body shape. Mm-hmm. So often when I'm training now in sessions for the lawyers who would be instructing us, I will talk about, in fact, a very recent case of a young man who was involved in an RTA. He sustained a C4, C5 complete injury, and he was discharged with a nose-operated power chair, so he could get out and about. So he was spending prolonged periods of time in his power chair, out and about. He was trying to live his best life he could with the only movement he had is through his nose. And as a result of that prolonged sitting in an inadequate pressure cushion, mm-hmm. but not just that, just prolonged periods. Prolonged sitting. He developed a grade 4 pressure ulcer. Yeah. And of course the guidance is bed. So I carried out the assessment 5 months after he had been on bed rest. And I can see, so we're provided with all of the medical records, and I can see that post-injury, his hips and his head of femur was intact, so it wasn't dislocated. But 5 months after failure to protect body in lying, his right hip was dislocated, completely dislocated. Mm-hmm. Now, my recommendations there for how we will even attempt to return to sitting, because what you see in lying, you see in sitting, of course, mm-hmm. and so that's really where I'm trying to explain the importance of, whilst you might think a young man, 20, why would he need 24-hour postural care? That's the reason. Yeah. Failure to do so can actually result in secondary complications such mm-hmm. as dislocated hips, such as extended pressure care and pressure damage. So, yeah, I do feel extremely passionate about that. Now, that's in spinal injury, but I tended to see that more within conditions such as cerebral palsy, working with children. Mm-hmm. Again, we can protect that body shape to reduce the likelihood of any deterioration. Mm-hmm. And yet we often think, there's high tone, so you're going to see contractures. But I really feel that we need to challenge that. So we train now to this new course in 24-hour postural care, and it's all based around a 7-point toolbox. So mm-hmm. therapists understand that it's not just one thing. So it's not about, we will give you this and that will make the difference. It's a 7-point toolbox, and
can you say what the 7 points are?
Yeah, more than happy to. So,
just in case there's somebody listening, say, I wonder,
what they say. Yes, so there is actually, and we'd be more than happy to provide you with the QR code for the tourist module. But it starts off as toolbox. Tool 1 is advice and education. Mm-hmm. So it's so important that we start with that. It's the reason why. Why are we advising you on the importance of protecting your body shape when sitting, when lying, when standing, and if appropriate, when walking for some of the little ones who mm-hmm. would. So why are we talking about that? Mm-hmm. If we don't educate and give advice on why, then we often see that tool 5, which is equipment, which we'll come to, mm-hmm. is either not being used because people don't understand why, or they've not been given the correct advice and education. And then tool 2 is movement. Mm-hmm. So whether that's movement from sitting to lying, from lying to rebound or floor. So rebound is an activity that some of the people I would support, which is on a trampoline, which is amazing. So being hoisted onto it, and that's the best place to train. I love doing things like this when you get to train onto a trampoline. Or hydrotherapy. So, The first opportunity might be not having the buoyancy, and the only opportunity where you're not having the gravitational pull affecting your body shape. Having so movement is toolbox tool 3. Tool 2. Tool 3 is environmental considerations. How is the person being assisted for their activities, feeding, etc. So that setting the environment up can be extremely important. Then we have tool 4, which is moving and handling. So moving and handling, key. You can have the most wonderful therapeutic seating system that you can possibly provide, which I'm used to. Many of the people I would support would benefit from the Phoenix, for example. Yeah. So we could have the chair wonderfully set up, the correct seat width, seat depth, back angle, everything set up. But if we fail to position that person, then it's unsuitable for them. So we need people to understand the importance of moving and handling, and that's around, you may have the correct sling, but if you don't apply the sling correctly, so if it's off to one side, so that's moving and handling is key.
It's crucial, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yep. And that happens, so sometimes I'm talking about the Phoenix and in situ slings, etc., but we're talking about going back to, when moving and assisting might just be sit to stand. So we're still thinking about postural care when the person is still mobile. Oh, absolutely. So we have, and even more so, because it's positioning on, how is the pelvis sitting when the person is mobile, because that will affect when they're walking. So it's educating people around that. And then you have tool 5, which is positioning equipment. Yep. So that equipment can be makes such a difference. We do see that. We also need to appreciate within that tool 5 of equipment that because a person is provided with, say, a wonderful power chair with a very high level pressure care cushion, that doesn't mean to say that they don't need an alternative seating system, something that allows for a changing posture, that movement. We still see the thoughts that, well, if they have a suitable wheelchair, they don't need an alternative seating system. So that's in my mind like saying, well, if you have one pair of shoes, I would certainly go running in heels. So why would you? And obviously, I've described one case of the detrimental effects of failing to provide alternatives, and that equipment also includes supported lying, which I have to say, for my role as an occupational therapist, I fully encompass that because I recognise that what you see in lying, you see in sitting. So I do encourage therapists to always look at. So what I say is that when in the morning, you take back the sheets from someone who's been lying in bed, look at their body shape. What's happening there, and hopefully we'll protect it. So we've got 5, which is equipment, and that might be supported lying. So it tends to be wheelchairs, supported lying equipment, and seating systems. Ideally, if we have access to walkers and standing frames too, that's the 24-hour picture. And then we have 6, which is orthosis.
Right, okay.
Really important. Not always. I mean, a lot of the people we would support with cerebral palsy, for example, might have spinal braces. So realising the importance of how that affects positioning. Also, AFO, so ankle foot orthosis. Interestingly, though, getting the correct orthotics. So if you think about, obviously you understand correct seating is where the person's foot position in order to load and position the feet is reliant on AFOs. But if the AFO is inadequate and causes pressure ulcers, skin tissue breakdown, which is some of the little ones I'll see, that's what we're seeing. So it's education around, what orthotics does that person need to position them carefully, and more to the point, let's make them comfortable, because if the orthosis that they're supposed to wear in order to maintain their body shape is uncomfortable,
they won't wear them.
No.
Lack of use.
And tool 7 is medication. So many of the people that I would work with have require baclofen, Botox, so either baclofen by oral means or baclofen pump. But it's so important to understand that when you're explaining 24-hour postural care, because the time at which the person takes that medication will directly impact their body shape and how they're presenting, certainly energy-wise. So if you think about if you take a high dose of baclofen, yes, it will dramatically lower your tone.
Which is your function?
Fatigue. Yeah. So it's about balancing that out. And, you know, if we can get the benefit, so a lot of the parents I will work with will see directly as the baclofen is increased, their child's energy is decreased. So we're trying to say, well, how can we, and it might be that we go back to that tool 2 for movement. Well, actually, maybe it's better to use certain time of the day for movement. Things like the MOVE program is fantastic. And sometimes I've had family members say, we haven't had to take baclofen at that time because the activity has directly improved their tone. Now that's surely, and that's the same with, you know, medication or medical intervention. Would hopefully be the last. Nobody really wants to go down the route of spinal rods, which a lot of the children I would support you know, have to go for, but we don't want surgery or medical intervention.
So this is the box. So did you create this?
I didn't.
Who created this?
The National Postural Strategy Group. That's
in Scotland.
Yeah.
And who and how do they deliver the training, and who do they deliver the training to?
So this is, again, a brand new training course. I've only piloted it so far. So what I did was I've been working with the National Strategy Group for many, many years, and it's something that I felt hugely passionate about, that carers receive mandatory training in safe moving and handling, but not in postural care. So I had been saying, we really need this. And what is it they say? You know, if it's not there, well, then create it. So thankfully, NES, which is NHS, or National Education for Scotland, so they have they formed, through our information, they formed an online module. So we've taken, what I did was took the first 3 modules, which are all online, and then the 3 modules which are practical, and have run that delivering practical in-person training for postural care. So that's all around, well, we understand why, and this is for paid carers, because all the focus to date has tended to be on educating other therapists. So, you know, as therapists, yes, we absolutely have to understand our physiology, anatomy, we need to understand, but moreover, we need to understand our measurements, our body indices. So that's training for care, that's training for therapists. And then we have had to create training available for informal carers, so parents, etc. But then all of the people that we would work with for paid carers for agency,
they weren't getting paid.
So there's always been a need. So we hope that we'll see more.
And are you
carers.
getting much uptake on that at the minute?
Well, Capability Scotland are really leading the way with this. So they have secured funding and agreed that they have a policy in place. So there's events such as the Scottish Manual Handling Forum that myself and one of the OTs, who has been wonderful in producing a policy, because of course if you put it in your policy that you provide training, therein lies you provide training. So they come to ourselves for, so I'm now in a position where I need to bring on new trainers and make sure that they're able to deliver according to the 7-point toolbox that I referred to.
That's all very interesting. So as I say, so you have the medico-legal.
Yes.
Then you do your manual handling, or you call it, what do you call it? What do you call it? You don't really call it manual handling.
Moving and assisting.
Moving and assisting.
Well, I have to say you become programmed to, I would say, moving and handling. But the reason I say moving and assisting, and even more so, I've noticed that so Capability Scotland is an organisation, they say moving and assisting, and they also refer to the client as a customer. So you find yourself using these terms. But it's client, and I will say to people, it's you know, whether we're referring to patient, client, customer, we're all talking about the person we support.
Yeah, that's right. So, and then you have the 24-hour posture and the importance of looking at posture throughout the whole of the day, from they get up and out of bed in the morning until they go to bed, and sitting, standing, lying, and all. So what are your hopes for the future of this? Like, what would you like to see?
So sometimes it feels like a little bit of a surprise to me that in this day, so in 2025, that actually it's not already in place. I struggle with that concept, and that it's a light bulb moment still for many therapists. Yeah. And I suppose I do want to contribute to that. So things like being invited as a visiting lecturer, I'm happy I do that. You know, that's something I want to be part of. So to make sure that newly qualified therapists are indeed receiving the information. You understand, moving and handling, or manual handling as it's referred to within the legislation, is indeed legislative for mandatory training. We lack two things that I'm asking for. One, I have been asking for some time, and I've requested directly from Healthcare Improvement Scotland, is to have standards. So if we have standards in protection of body shape and implementation of 24-hour postural care, then everyone has an obligation to meet those standards. Yeah. And the other thing is that we should have mandatory postural care training for those who are working with individuals who have needs for protecting their body shape. Like you do have, if you have epilepsy and you're supporting someone with epilepsy, then you should have adequate training, and that's really what I would like to see improved.
Well, there's plenty of work to be done in the future, isn't there? I was just up the university on Monday, and it was first year students, I was talking to them about seating, and you know, you could just see their eyes lighting up. They never really thought about it, their posture, how they sat, the impact it was having, or anything like that. And it's getting in as early as possible. They were only first years, and to be honest, we need to go back a lot of times to get the message. But that's where to start. Start with them at first year and try and get that message. So, yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Good.
Yep, I think early on, and not to overly complicate things. Whilst, as I say, I appreciate as therapists, yes, we do need to understand our anatomy and physiology, but when we communicate with the carers, we have to be mindful that they have so much other tasks to be taking on. We don't want to add to that. We need it to be integral within. And sometimes when the occupational therapists, that especially at university level, it can be more of an impact to describe it in terms of from a carer's point of view than overly complicating it. So to keep it quite straightforward, I would say is really key, because that's where those light bulb moments come.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, and as always, you're full of information and full of passion, and you really are dedicated to your profession. It's just very evident. And from the first day I met you way back at that conference, I just knew that you were somebody that was really very compassionate and very dedicated. So thank you for taking part in the podcast.
Not at all.
I'm sure it'll be, and we will share that QR code of the 7
Amazing.
the box. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Thank you so much.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.